Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sunny Wasserman back with the 272nd Green Grassroots Emergency Election
Or
Protection Coalition Zoom call. We are starting off with 36 people. That's a magic number, and we're have a full boat as always. It's great to see you. I hope you all had a great July 4th. As you know, what they say is don't come forth on the 5th with a fourth, or they won't come forth on the 5th. Something like that. So anyway, we are here. We want to acknowledge the passing of Lindsey Graham. It's a landmark situation. His sister has just been appointed the new senator from South Carolina. We welcome her. She follows in a long line of sisters and close relatives, including the presidency of James Buchanan, who had his sister or some close relative become the vice president. But at any rate, we're going to start with Arthur Kanegis, who has a great film. It's a sort of off the beaten track for us, but he's going to explain what the world is my country means. We're then going to go to the great John Brakey in Arizona, one of the true godfathers of the election protection movement. He's going to be on with Ken Bennett, the former Secretary of State of the state of Arizona. Further down the road, we're going to get into the data center AI situation, which is obviously world changing and really deeply important to all of us. And then Carl Grossman and I will join, hopefully, Kevin Camps for a discussion of the fact that Donald Trump is now in charge of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. If that sentence doesn't terrify you, then nothing will. But we're gonna deal with that in the second hour. Very important. We also have Vina Colley with us, who's going to talk about the Piketon plant in Ohio and many other nuclear issues. So we have a full boat as always. It's wonderful to have. We jumped up. We got 43 people. It's wonderful to have you all with us. I have been following the World Cup. We're trying to learn about soccer in the highlights. It's a good game, a very interesting game, and of course, I have an issue with one of the red cards, so I will be calling the head of FIFA to get that reversed, and I'll keep you posted on that. So, in the meantime, Arthur Kanegis. Also, we have a lot of issues. It turns out Lindsey Graham was actually quite active on the Ukraine situation. And his last meeting, his last official act was to go to Ukraine and offer support. But there is a whole other school of thought about Lindsey Graham's real role with Ukraine. So we're going to be joined next week or the week after by the great Howie Hawkins and some other good folks that we've had on before to do a deep dive on Ukraine. I follow Ukraine pretty closely. There are these amazing YouTubes on pretty much every night about how Russia is getting its butt kicked, and I always wonder how credible they are. So we're going to deal with that in a week or two. But we're going to start now with Arthur Kanegis. Arthur has made a spectacular film, and then of course we'll go to John Brakey, Ken Bennett, and Allison Green. Hopefully, will also join us to give us a report on election protection, which is absolutely, of course, critical. And we're joined by Kathy Wolf from Maine, who's going to give us a personal report on her imminent appointment as U.S. Senator from Maine. Kathy, congratulations. So, Arthur Kanegis, tell us, I watched this film. It's a true masterpiece. It's about a guy who decided to make himself a citizen of the world and to offer us all that option. And Arthur, if you'll give us the link to the film, so Steve, if you'll put it in the chat so that Steve can feature it, we want you to tell us about Gary and the his incredible campaign, which really got worldwide attention to set up a global citizenship. And then we're going to go to John Brakey and talk about election protection. But go ahead, Arthur Kanegis, please.
Well, it was a time like this when the world was just totally in shambles. We had just come out of World War II. Uh, Europe was still in ruins, and Gary Davis was a Broadway actor. He was a song and dance man on Broadway. All he wanted to do was to make people laugh and to sing and to enjoy life. And he had an incredible success standing in for Danny Kaye on Broadway. Yeah, there you go. There's our website. He stood in for Danny Kaye on Broadway, and he had those incredible rapid fire numbers on Broadway. People thought nobody could ever do Danny Kaye, but when this young man, 19 years old, did it, boy, there was a worldwide, uh, excitement about it. And he ended up, though, uh, shortly thereafter, getting drafted in the Air Corps. World War II broke out, and he found himself in a bomber plane. First he was ordered to bomb Peenemünde, and he was, very happy to destroy Hitler's war factories, nuclear war making. But then he was ordered to bomb the city of Brandenburg, and his own brother was killed, and he was just torn up inside. He said. And then he saw the pictures of the damage he had caused in Brandenburg, and he said, "What was I doing? Killing these people in their homes and schools and factories? I mean, I'm here to make people laugh, not to blow them up. And why wasn't I arrested for that? And why weren't the people who killed my brother arrested?" And then he went through a long period of
I will point out very quickly that there was another man who was a bombardier in World War II who also had a huge change of heart and who also changed the world. And his name was Howard Zinn. Howard
yes,
Zinn was a great left historian, inspired me, actually wrote the introduction to my first book. And he was a bombardier. And then he followed up on the city that he bombed and was deeply disturbed. And just like Gary Davis here.
yes, Howard Zinn is a fantastic historian, and we have to learn from history because the way we're going to get to a Solartopia. And by the way, I love being on this show because it is exactly what we need, and we have the capability to do that. But let me continue with the story. So, so he finally made an incredible realization, and that is. Uh, in virtually every jurisdiction on earth, it's illegal to murder people. It's illegal to rape and kill people, except one, the world. In the world, it's perfectly fine. You can go around killing people, murdering them, saying, okay, I'm going to blow up that city, I'm going to destroy these people. And that's not illegal. It's incredible. And he realized that the reason is that we don't have any law at the global level. It's incredible. There's an anarchy, and humans have already invented a system. He said that eliminates war. I mean, inside countries with one government, we don't fight wars. We go to court. Well, what about civil wars? Two sovereignties, two governments. But if everybody accepts one government, then we have other ways of solving our problems. Then, if when some terrorist blows up a federal building, they don't retaliate by blowing up the city he came from. They treat it as a criminal justice matter, and so. Then he thought, once he came to that realization of what was key for the planet, and he said, what if I'm recalled to active duty to bomb Moscow in a in a war that will end humanity? He said, I've got to do something. But what can I do? I'm not a politician. I never went to law school. I'm an actor. So what did he do? Well, he pulled off what today might be called a flash mob, along with once he had gone to Paris, and officially gave up national citizenship. And when he did that at the U.S. Embassy, you have to be outside of the country to give up your citizenship. When he did that, uh, the embassy said, "Well, there's no such thing." Agnes Schneider was a person, and he said, "Well, there is now." And because they asked him, "What's he going to be a national of?" So he became the first official world citizen. And in more rural Europe, Jean-Paul Sartre, the Albert Camus, um, many great intellectuals, a whole group of famous intellectuals uh, joined him, and with this group, they they launched this they launched this flash mob action. What they did is they snuck into the UN. Albert Camus had his trench coat over his head and then glasses or something he wouldn't be recognized, and they got into various places in the UN balcony. And then at a key moment, while the Soviet delegate was angrily denouncing Eleanor Roosevelt's Universal Declaration of Human Rights and calling it intrusion on their internal sovereignty. And the nations were squabbling back and forth. And Gary leapt up on the balcony in front of the whole United Nations, and they were meeting in Paris this year. This was before it was the building was built in New York in the East River. He leapt up and he said, "The nations you represent divide us and lead us to the brink of total war." And he called on them to have elections of a government of, by, and for the people, or step aside and allow a People's World Assembly to rise from their ranks to do it. Well, this so this news was so exciting in post-war Europe that 20,000 people rallied with him at the Velodrome, the big, huge bicycle stadium like the Madison Square Garden of Paris, and they were demanding that the UN recognize the rights of humanity. This was on December 9th, 1948. On December 10th, the Soviets withdrew their threat to veto the Universal Declaration. Instead, they abstained, and the Universal Declaration was passed unanimously. This became the basic standard of for all nations and all peoples, and everybody is supposed to enforce that. It says not just nations, every institution, every organization is supposed to enforce this Universal Declaration. And yet, today, many people don't even know about it because we are we have rampant governments out of control. Albert Einstein is one of the people who joined Gary and was very enthusiastic about him. And Einstein said he grasped the key to humanity's survival. He said, "With all my heart, I believe the world's present system of sovereign nations can only lead to barbarism and war and inhumanity, and only world law can assure progress toward a civilized and peaceful community."
Well, I want to strongly recommend everybody read the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I believe it's one of the it's right up there with the Declaration of Independence. And really, that's about the extent of it. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was essentially drafted by Eleanor Roosevelt, who should have been president of the United States. And it's a magnificent document. And I never knew this story that the Soviets were yelling about it, and then they acceded to it because it was adopted as an official document of the United Nations. It should be the guiding principle of all relations between human beings, and everybody needs to know this Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Absolutely. It's so essential, really, for our survival. And all of the horrors that we're seeing in the world today are all violations of clauses in that. And that's actually even stronger than the Declaration of Independence, because it guarantees other things like, universal rights for things like, I know, healthcare and other things that are essential for human beings. So it is a terrific document. Definitely everyone should read it. And Gary, kind of mobilized a movement, and the Soviets saw that movement with not only 20,000 people in Europe, but I mean, from Paris, but all around the world, there were people demanding that uh, rallying in support of this. And actually, that was key. Now, here you're showing some very interesting things on screen. This is the world citizen government that Gary created. At first, he had no government. He said, "I don't need any documents. We're all human beings. Just I'm alive." And he ended up going all over the tried and travel all over the world, and was thrown in 34 different prisons through his life. And most of those,
That might be a record.
yeah,
30.
most of those were before. he created the world passport, and that's citizen government that he created, the government of, by, and for the people of the planet. He declared it. He said, every constitution says, uh, almost every constitution says it's based on the right on the will of the people. We the people established the United States. Well, if we the people create governments, why are we knocking our heads on the wall trying to get these nation states to reform themselves? They're not going to do it. The politicians stay in power by protecting us against them in this condition of world anarchy. So he created this world citizen government. It's going today. You can get your world passport. You see in the little clip there, there's David Gallup who runs it. He's in our movie, and you can get the world passport and identify yourself as a citizen of Earth. And now you just showed
So
here Martin
Gary
Sheen.
Davis, Gary Davis
Martin,
would show up at borders of countries and try to pass through either with his own papers or this document, this world passport, and they would throw him in jail. Is that what would happen?
well, at first he was mostly thrown in jail when he didn't have any papers. Once he had this world passport, he actually was successful in crossing many borders with it, but other times he wasn't. There are on that World Citizen Government page you see there, they show copies of visa stamps in the world passport, and virtually every country, almost every country on Earth, has stamped those passports with visas or entry or exit visas at one time or another. But it's very arbitrary. Each border guard can treat things different ways. They can kick out, exclude one person except the next. We traveled with Gary Davis to India, where there was a conference in Lucknow, India, of Supreme Court justices working to create world law above the nations that divide us. And Gary had gotten into India 4 times officially on his visa, with a visa, including Prime Minister Nehru uh, helped him stamp the first visa and admit him because Gary gave him a world passport, and Prime Minister Nehru said, "This is the passport Gandhi would have carried." But then on one of the times, and we caught this on film, they refused him and sent him back. But at that same conference where they refused him, another person got in on the world passport. So it's very arbitrary. So what you're seeing on the screen now are visa stamps from, as you can see, almost every nation on Earth at one time or another. Some have stamped it numerous times. Here's many stamps from the United States. I have one where. Well, my associate, the producer on this film, has a very interesting one. We came into L.A. one time, and first she gave her U.S. passport so they wouldn't throw her in jail, and then she presented her world passport, said, "Could you please do me a favor and stamp this also?" And the woman looked at it. She had talked about world citizenship, and the woman said, "Oh, isn't this a passport we're not supposed to stamp?" And she pulled out a rubber stamp and she stamped it. That was her own act of world citizenship. She was being a world citizen and enforcing world law.
Well, we've come across this now more recently. There's a global competition involving lacrosse. I forget the details of it, but lacrosse is a sport like soccer. There is an organization that deals with it, and there's a world competition. And the Iroquois, the Haudenosaunee of upstate New York, who invented lacrosse, were actually denied the ability to compete because they wanted to compete as the Iroquois nation as opposed to Americans or Canadians. And so that's something that you may want to look into, Arthur, as a piece of this.
Yes, that certainly is right. I mean, there are, if we the people create government, then we have a right to create. Native Americans have a right to create their government. These are all fictions. I mean, there's not really a line between the United States and Mexico. It's an artificial fiction, or between Canada and the U.S. And people are killed and fought over, and people believe that there's this fictional border. But Gary, being an actor, saw things differently than most of us do. Most of us will come across a border and we see the border guards and the barbed wire and all this officialdom, and we feel like, oh, here's little me. I hope they'll accept me to cross. Well, Gary looks at that and he says, this is a set. there's not really a line here. This is a stage, and they've set up this set, and they're wearing all these costumes, and they're trying to look important because they're trying to convince me there's a line here and that they can keep me out. So I'm going to outrank them. I'm going to draw them into my game. So he would come up and present his world passport, and if they were denying it, he would ask for their badge number and so on. He would show his badge that he's a representative of the world government of world citizens, and he would outrank them, and he would draw them into his stage, draw them onto his stage.
Well, it's a wonderful movie. Everybody really should see it. You put the link in the chat, I hope. And I will actually apply for my own world citizenship. I was with my grandkids yesterday and we were playing various trivia, and it appears that correct me if I'm wrong, that there are 193 countries in the world at this point in time. Is that right?
That's how many are in the UN. There are others like the Iroquois Nation that may not be in the UN, but yes, and for instance in Taiwan, which they don't allow in. But yeah, there are 193 in the United Nations.
Okay, so there's probably around 200 so-called countries in the world, but the point, and there is a beautiful 1 minute trailer for this film from Martin Sheen, who's the great actor who was in Apocalypse Now, among other things. And so, Arthur, this is a spectacular contribution.
Yeah,
We
can
have
we
about
can we
60
play
people.
can I share screens
I
and
don't
play the
know if we
trailer
can.
or
I don't think we can play it. I don't know. Steve, do you have the ability to play that 1 minute trailer from Martin Sheen? If not, it's okay.
Yeah, we're
You-
kind of worried about copyright issues
no, no,
unless you
no.
have,
You have our full right. We own it, and
well,
we grant you
the
full
computer's
copyright.
AI doesn't recognize you as a human being. See, that's the problem.
We'll have to
Okay.
talk about that. We don't
No,
recognize
I'm
AI as
serious.
a human being.
We
But
don't recognize them.
for the
We-
world's sake, which is the thing that you're working on, is that we need to share what's going to help other people. Creative Commons. So YouTube has two licenses, the default one, which isn't shareable, and the other one is Creative Commons. So please get your guys at YouTube to make it Creative Commons so we can
All
share it
right,
out.
we'll make the trailer a Creative
All right,
Commons
there's good
license.
advice from a guy
Thank
who
you.
knows whereof he speaks. We have 61 people with us. Arthur Kanegis, this has been a truly wonderful way to open up for a guy like John Brakey and
Yeah,
Ken.
and I do hope everyone will go to the website, theworldismycountry.com, because the film is now, well, it was chosen as a uh, movies for grown-ups by AARP, and now it's going
Well,
out
that
on
would eliminate
PBS.
half the people on the call here. I don't know.
And now it's going out on PBS stations across the country, but you don't have to wait for it to be on your local station right now. You can go to theworldismycountry.com, and right there's a big PBS bug. You click on that, and you can watch the PBS version online right now. And when you click on it, it actually takes you to your local PBS station and plays it online, the whole program. So you can watch the 57-minute film, and you can also watch the trailer, and you can see the sponsors that are helping us get this out. And we hope you'll join us and become one of the sponsors and support getting this film out as widely as possible.
Well, it's wonderful you picked up on this, on Gary Davis's work. We are just the film, as I say, is really great. I watched it. I'll watch it again. I'm going to file for my own passport here. And Arthur Kanegis, thank you so much. Eileen Proctor, thank you for bringing Arthur to us, and keep with
Yeah.
us going forward.
And
Thank
I
you.
do see in the chat people are asking if the UDHR does treat women equally, and yes, that's an important part of it. A lot of places it's better than the Declaration.
All right. Well, thank you so much. As seeing as how it was written by one of the world's great women, Eleanor Roosevelt, if I had a list, a dinner list of people I could have dinner with through history, she would be right at the top. So, thank you so much for that. And Arthur Kanegis, stay with us through going on forward, and everybody enjoy the film. Okay.
Thank
So,
you so much,
we're
and we will build a Solartopia, but we'll do that as citizens of one planet.
Well, actually, part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights now has to include 100% renewable energy worldwide, or else we're not going to make it. So that's a
Absolutely.
slight
Yeah.
addition to and to your
But the
world.
only way to do that is to have law above the nations. They can't be done inside the broken nation state system. So let's go ahead and rise above that and do it, because every single problem is solvable as long as we are in a system that brings out the highest and best of humanity instead of a race to the bottom like the current broken system.
Well, as they say, from your lips to dog's ears. Thank you so much, Arthur Kanegis, and stay with us. Come back whenever, and everybody go see the movie. Okay, we're now joined by in the state of Arizona, where you guys also have universal citizenship, by the former Secretary of State Ken Bennett, and by John Brakey. And you guys are really, and I think Allison Steele is somewhere, Allison Green is somewhere with us. We're going to segue from what you're doing into a discussion of voter rights. And God knows we need him. So, John Brakey and Ken Bennett, take it away. Allison Green, you're with us. Give us the latest developments in your work and how we're dealing with the need to protect our rights to vote.
Well, if I could just jump in first and let Stefan know that I sent him a picture, that when Ken starts talking, I'd like to have that picture put up. And because it involves our state, because, we're having our primary is July 21st. And of course, the way audits are done are problematic, but I'll let Ken explain that a little better when we get into that. Oh, there's the picture. Ken, why don't you go ahead?
Oh,
All righty.
Ken
Well, thank
Bennett
you, Harvey.
is a former state senator of Arizona, when he was actually secretary of the whole state, and a great guest that we had on before, and a great advocate for voter rights. Go ahead, Ken.
Well, I'm the chair of the board, and John is the executive director of an organization called Audit USA. It's a 501c3 nonprofit, but John, for almost more than 20 years, and I for a little bit less than that, have been fighting for integrity in our elections, transparency, trackability, and public verifiability of our elections. Each state can differ, of course, in how they conduct their elections and how they use certain mechanisms to try to accomplish those three things. One of the mechanisms that is used in Arizona and often referenced by election officials as the solve all mechanism of proving that our elections are secure in Arizona is hand count audits. And this is one of the things that John and I have been working with. Obviously, I helped the counties oversee these during the 6 years that I was Secretary of State. But the more we've watched how these hand count audits happen, at least in Arizona, it has brought to our attention some very serious concerns. And we just wanted to kind of give a report to the group that we're working to try to solve that problem in Arizona. The biggest problem in Arizona, well, let me describe that. In Arizona, state law says that within about 24 to 48 hours after the election has occurred, which is usually a Tuesday night at 7 p.m., the counties are supposed to randomly select a certain percentage, usually it's about 2% of the batches of ballots that were counted in the election, and have those batches of ballots hand counted by individuals, by both parties, multi-party, to verify that the machines were counting the ballots in those batches correctly. And that's a good thing. The biggest problem with Arizona's mechanism is that now with 80%, for example, of our voters casting their ballot by mail, most of the ballots are counted in Arizona in the central count locations, and the counties are pre-selecting these 2% of the batches. This is an example in the cartoon of Maricopa County a few years ago, where they pre-selected 52 batches.
One
in an election.
quick note: Maricopa County includes Phoenix and is by far the biggest county in Arizona. And John, I think it's the first or second largest county in the country. Is that right?
That is correct.
Right.
Maybe third or fourth, because every so often they change, and I think we're third now.
But it involves what, 2, 3 million people?
Yeah, what is it? I think it's what, almost
2.9,
3 million people.
2.9 million, 2.9 million registered voters,
Yeah.
but more than 60% of Arizona is in this one county. So,
So
for
when you're
example,
talking about Maricopa County, you're talking basically about the outcome of the state.
yes,
Okay, go ahead.
over 60% of Arizona is in Maricopa County. Over 20% of Arizona is in Pima County, down around Tucson, and the entire rest of the state makes up less than 20%. So what
Okay.
happens in these two counties is big for Arizona. Now, these hand count audits by humans, by both parties working together to count a certain number of batches of ballots to make sure that the machines that counted those batches a few days before did so correctly. That's a good thing, but most of the counties are pre-selecting a few batches and publishing publicly which batches have been set aside to be checked.
They put it
And
right
so
in the box with the ballots is what they do. It's like a stream, they explain it. Okay. And every day they pick 2 to 4 batches starting 14 days out. And when they pick it, they stop the machinery, they identify the batch, and then they print the results of that batch and they put it in the box. Go ahead.
And
Ken.
all of that, and putting the results that the machine counted in the box and waiting to compare that with what humans count is good. But telling the world, for example, in this cartoon, and these are actual numbers that were used in Maricopa County not long ago in an election, telling the world that here are the 52 batches that we're going to randomly select from. And in this case, Maricopa County ultimately selected 26, half of the 52 batches. But there were 10,616 batches of ballots in that election that year. So telling the world that you're pre-selecting these 52 batches, of which we're going to count half of them by hand by humans to check the machines, that just tells anybody that wants to manipulate the election, mess around with the other 9,900 and some odd batches. And so this is one of the things that we're trying to get changed in Arizona, perhaps as early as this November's election, but the legislature is not in session. The only way we're probably going to affect this change is to voluntarily get the cooperation of some of the county boards of supervisors, many of which we know personally. But we're trying to improve a key election verification mechanism that's used in Arizona and other states. Yes, let's verify by hand counting some of the batches and checking the machines, but let's not tell the world which batches we're going to check beforehand, so that a manipulator or a potential manipulator of the elections can say, okay, I'm going to mess around with the other 10,000 batches.
All right, so let's have a couple clarifications. First of all, you say the ballots are coming in by mail. Now, Donald Trump has pledged repeatedly to get rid of vote by mail in the whole country. Are we secure that you said 80% of the ballots in Arizona this fall will come in by mail? Are we sure that's going to happen?
Well, let's clarify that. First of all, I do not agree with Donald Trump's declaration that there's some fundamental flaw with ballot by mail. But in Arizona, 80% of the ballots that are ultimately counted in our elections are sent to the voters by the 15 counties by mail. Some of them come back by mail. Some of them are dropped off in person at the county election offices or in drop boxes controlled by the county. Some of them are dropped off in person on election day. So in Arizona, 80% of the ballots that will ultimately be counted were mailed to the voters by mail. Donald Trump is trying to restrict or otherwise say that coming back to the county by mail is somehow a problem when the county's mailing them to the voters. It hasn't occurred to him, apparently, that we get a lot of things from important places by mail, whether it's bank statements or Social Security, whatever's. I mean, there's a lot of things that come to American citizens by mail, but not all 80% are returned to the counties by mail, Harvey. And
Okay.
so, for example, I live in Yavapai County up in north central Arizona. 80% of the ballots go out by mail, but only about 20% of that 80%, so now we're down to around 15% of the total number of ballots are returned by mail. In Yavapai County, most voters take them in personally to the county election offices or these secure drop boxes that have 24/7 cameras on them, and they have a record of every person who dropped off a ballot there. And so it's a little bit of a misnomer that all of these ballots are coming back by mail. And I have two mailers from the Trump campaigns in 2024 assuring Arizona voters when the state and national Republican parties were pushing getting ballots back in by mail. Obviously, they're trying to find Republican ballots by mail. That ballot by mail was just fine. So they are being quite hypocritical to say now that ballot by mail is not okay, because just a couple of years ago, when Trump won Arizona, he won in a system where 80% of the ballots were by mail.
Is there a risk, and is there any history of ballots not reaching voters on time for them to turn around and get them back in?
Sure, but they're very small. For example, last Friday, per Arizona state law, last Friday, so that's about 10, 11 days before the election next Tuesday, not tomorrow, but the next day. But in Arizona state law, it says the second Friday before the Tuesday election is the last day that a voter can call into a county and say, send me my ballot by mail. Most Arizonans who vote by mail are on what's called an active early voter list, where they have told the county, every time I'm eligible for an election, send my ballot by mail. If somebody asked for a ballot to be sent to them by mail last Friday, it may have gone out on Monday. If it's up on the reservation or on some distant area of Arizona, it could have taken 3 or 4 days to get there. They get their ballot, they fill it out. If they choose to mail it back, Arizona is not a postmark state. Arizona is a in-hand state. Other states are by postmark. If it was postmarked by the election day, whenever the election officials get it, they can count it like California does. But in Arizona, they can only count a ballot if it's in the physical possession of the county election department, not the U.S. Post Office, but the county election department by 7 p.m. on election day.
Okay, so a recent Supreme Court decision said that there in other states they have to accept a ballot that is postmarked on time if that's their law, right? But in
Yes.
your state, it's not the law, so the ballot does in fact have to be in their possession by 7 p.m. that Tuesday.
So I know even during the 6 years that I was Secretary of State for Arizona, which was 2009 to 2015, I had communications with all 15 counties, all of which unfortunately received some ballots back by mail the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday after the election, and they were kept in a box, but they never got counted because they could only count, per Arizona state law, ballots that were in the county's possession by 7 p.m. on Tuesday.
Okay, that's clarifying. And then there's a note in the chat about the SAVE Act that targets voting rights. And if you guys want to comment on that, please go ahead. We have 70 people with us, and This is really, really important stuff. So thank you, Ken.
And if I could jump in for a second,
Please go ahead,
is
John.
that, originally when ARS 16602 came out, I was part of it. And then the bill got hijacked and by a Republican senator who was a lobbyist, and they just screwed the bill up terribly. And we looked at it at the very end, it was the best we could do was this. And half of the vote came in through real precincts. We don't have that anymore for the most part. Maricopa's gone voting centers, Pima County's voting centers. And if you look at just those two counties, around 91% of all the votes come in and are counted by batches, and none of those are separated by precincts. And precincts are the building blocks of our democratic republic. And that is where you look for problems, not in a big haystack. You go to precincts, and we counted on those. And then I used to be able to say, voting is a funny situation. If vote by mail is this, usually the precinct would be the same thing. It'd be within 2% because it was all over from the county. When Trump jumped in and said, hey, don't vote by mail, that screwed that whole thing up. And then, of course, precincts went virtual, okay? And so what we have in Arizona, I call election theater, because those audits are absolutely worthless. And just to add to that, me and Ken are writing a book, okay? And right now, tentatively, it's called the Cassandra series. We have 11 chapters already out. It's being rewritten right now. We hope to have it 90 days because I want to get Ken Bennett on the road, meeting with other Secretary of States to be able to give a book that explains what we've learned, just not in Arizona, but Florida, Michigan. I've been in 18 states in the last 10 years.
Well, you mentioned
it needs to be brought up how bad this situation really is, because other states are not much better.
Well, obviously it goes, where there are 50 different situations. The question, one thing you mentioned, Ken, was a little confusing, the role of machines. Now, I'm assuming that if Arizona is voting on paper ballots, which is something we advocated for after the 2004 election in Ohio, if the ballots are paper, and 80%, I believe, of the ballots nationwide are mailed, so that means they are hand-marked paper ballots. But you mentioned machines. What role does machines play in this whole process?
Well, it depends what kind of a machine. Of course, we want hand-marked paper ballots going through a digital scanner, okay? Digital takes a picture. That creates redundancy. That's a good thing to have, okay? They got the original ballot. They got the original image. And if somebody tries to game the system, they're going to be in really big trouble. And that is most of the country now. But people are having a hard time pulling out those images and sharing them. We're very disturbed by that because we are definitely in big trouble in this country when it comes to what's happening in this country. And a lot of people are losing faith in democracy.
Okay.
We need to restore
Okay,
it.
John.
Yes,
okay.
Ken.
Now, Harvey, to your question. For example, there are some machines, as John just mentioned, are digital scanners that are programmed to look at a paper ballot, and they're programmed to say, if I find a black mark in this location, that's a vote for Smith. If I find a black mark in this next location, that's a vote for Jones in whatever race Smith and Jones are in. But there's also machines in America called ballot marking devices, where you are going up to a TV screen or a touch screen, and you're telling it, okay, in this race, I'm going to vote for Smith. And then in the next race, I'm going to vote for Garcia. In the next race, I'm voting for Wasserman and whatever. And then now these ballot marking devices, some of them create the impression of an image or the idea that there's an image of your ballot. But what it's really doing is it's saving all of those choices in a QR code.
Yeah.
And the QR code then is being read by the system, and the voters having to trust that all of those votes were correctly recorded in the electronic ballot in the QR code. If a ballot marking device is not creating a paper ballot or a visual representation of a paper ballot that can be looked at by humans to say, yes, that was a vote for Wasserman. Yes, that was a vote for Garcia. If ballot marking devices are embedding all of these choices in a QR code where the average human being can't look at the QR code and tell what votes were recorded, we are against those machines.
Okay, that was an
Lisa,
issue. That's an issue dating back to at least 2000 and certainly 2004 in Florida and certainly 2004 in Ohio. But the bulk of the votes in the upcoming midterm election, we expect 80% or so will be mailed and will be on paper, right? And they will come back in either by mail or dropped in a drop box or presented in person at the voting booth. Is that correct?
that's correct. And in Arizona, 99.8% of all of our ballots are paper ballots. And even the ones that are done on machines, for example, people who are blind or whatever, they might vote using a puffing device. Whether, they're listening to something, and when they want to vote for Smith, they puff once and they don't puff for Jones. But it still prints out a little receipt, a paper receipt that they could, or a trusted friend or family member of theirs could say, okay, here's a paper receipt showing that it recorded the votes for the correct individuals that my loved one wanted to vote for. So
Wow. Okay. That's so my if people are going to vote for me, my campaign slogan will be "Puff for Wasserman." How's that? Anyway, okay. So that's of course part of the legal marijuana campaign that we won. So Allison Green, did you want to say something, please? Allison is another one of our great election protection activists.
Yes, and thank you. I'm completely with what John and Ken are talking about. First of all, we have this illusion of audits as opposed to there being actual audits. And so, like, what they're talking about is that, in the batches, for example, if you're predetermining which batches are going to get audited, I loved their little cartoon that it's like, well, then maybe the hackers will work on the other batches that aren't being audited, as they put in their cartoon. My background, I actually started way back when in supply chain, and I think that people don't understand that our election infrastructure is kind of like a supply chain. From the time that somebody is getting a ballot or casting a ballot or even registering to vote, all the way through to the vote being counted and tallied and certified, there are so many different links in the chain. And so they were just talking very well about, like, for example, we talk about how can machines actually, get in the way. They talked about the ballot marking devices, but for example, in my county, we do have hand marked paper ballots. And John was talking about the fact that they are on these high level scanners, and we'll call those the tabulators. But the other thing is that there is also a database that actually will say, okay, in order for a ballot to be tabulated, the person has to be in the voter rolls, and the system has to tell the tabulation, yes, you can count and include this in the count. So again, that's like one of the chains that can be broken is you come up and I mean I've got lots of examples where people are coming up, I got a message the other day from somebody who said, my wife has been registered for 20 years. I went and checked her registration. It's gone. She had to re-register. We had in 2024 people showing up who thought they were registered, and they were told you're not in the voter rolls, so we cannot count your ballot per se unless you're officially registered. So that's the other thing is that this is incredibly complicated, and there's so many different kind of places in the chain that are vulnerable and have not been protected the way that we need to. And one of the issues that we're dealing with is in this country, we are finding that we are meant to be a country of law and order. Our elections are the same thing. We have laws, but they actually have to be followed, and there has to be oversight to ensure they're being applied properly, and people are following them. So, you know,
Well, we
you
also have 50 states with differing situations. And in
yes.
Ohio, for example, the legislature made it so that there are essentially one drop box per county. And in Franklin County, where I lived, and there are over 1 million people in Franklin County, one drop box, and nobody knows where it is.
You know,
So,
and
you got in Arizona, we're going to expect a decent outcome because we have John Brakey and Ken Bennett on the case. But, you got 49 other states, and, where are the drop boxes? And are you saying also that all the counted paper ballots are at some point, each and every one is counted? Is that right? Hand marked. So at some point,
Well, they
I'm not
should
saying
be.
that. I'm
They,
not
they
saying that
should.
yet.
They
Yeah.
should be. I have released, both personally and as the chair of Audit USA, and Allison was talking very eloquently about an entire system of verifying election integrity, and it starts with voter registration.
Mm-hmm.
My 5 points for election integrity start with a very transparent and public voter registration system. And I believe that the voter registration rolls are public records in every state. I'm not aware of any state that says that the voter registration records are not public documents. So we should publish the heck out of the voter registration rolls. Now in Arizona, we cut off voter registration 29 days before an election. We know 28 days before an election, therefore, who's eligible to vote. And we should publish in every county the list of registered voters by name and address. There are some voters, judges and police officers and domestic violence victims and others who can have their names and addresses redacted so that we know, for example, there's about 600 redacted voters in my county. There's about 6,000 in the entire state of Arizona. But at least we know, yes, there are some redacted voters. We don't know their name and address because they are domestic violence victims or they're judges or police officers or whatever. But you start with the voter registration system. Here are the people. Let's say there's 1,000 of them. Here's the 1,000 eligible voters in this election. Then, as the election occurs, and people either sign in at the polls or they sign their envelope when they send their ballot back in by mail, the county election officials keep track of who voted. Not how they voted yet, but at least they did vote. So it's called your voter history, and the county keeps track of whether or not you participated in the election that time by voting. Maybe of the 1,000 registered voters, eligible voters, 800 participated, 800 voted. Okay. Step 3 is we should have 800 ballots. We should have, and you've got to go through this chain of custody and this supply chain thing that Allison's referring to verify. Okay. We put 1,200 ballots out in the precinct. 800 people voted. We should have 400 blank ballots back. or we put 200 ballots out in the precincts because 600 people voted by mail, so we didn't need all these ballots in the precinct. Anyway, you got to keep track of how many ballots did you print, how many did you send out by mail, how many did you put in the precinct, how many came back in by this way, by box, by whatever. But you verify that if your records show that 800 people voted, you should have 800 ballots.
And they should show up on the first list too.
Well, one quick question. If you're publishing the voter roll before the election, doesn't that give ICE and other players the ability to intimidate potential voters?
I don't believe it should, because
It's been published. Yeah, it's being
it's published
Public
right
record.
now. It's
Yeah.
already a public document.
Yeah.
You can either request through public record request or purchase at very low. I can purchase the entire voter registration database of Arizona for about $500.
So
Any day I want.
couldn't
They could, but all the voter roll says is that Ken Bennett is registered at 123 Maple Street, and
so
he's eligible to participate in the election.
Couldn't you get an intimidating visit from a bad player telling you not to vote?
I could get that right now if somebody doesn't like Ken Bennett and wants to show up at my address and say, I don't want you to vote in this election.
More importantly, they won't like the people that they think you're going to vote for.
Exactly, and which is why they don't like me as a voter. But ICE wouldn't know and shouldn't know whether somebody on a voter list got their ballot by mail, is going to go to the polls on election day, is going to drop it off in a drop box, is going to send it in by U.S. mail. Now, this is where Trump's executive order that says, well, I'm going to tell the post office to only deliver ballots to voters who are on our list of eligible citizens. That's where it gets very concerning, even for a Trump voter like me. I do not support much of the executive order that the president released months ago. There was a question in the chat box about the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act basically says the two main things in the SAVE Act is that you have to prove that you're a citizen to vote, and you have to show ID at the polls to vote. We already have that by voter approved initiative in Arizona. So we already have the SAVE Act in Arizona. If the Fed government wants to pass a SAVE Act, it wouldn't change what happens in Arizona one bit.
It
now,
would actually, Ken. Sorry.
One of the bad pieces about the SAVE Act is that it says if you're going to vote by mail, you got to put a copy of your driver's license in the envelope with your ballot. I don't support that, because I don't think in today's world, with all of the identity theft and things that's going on, I don't think we need to be making people put any more copies of their driver's license in any more envelopes going through the post office than is necessary. So that's an element of the SAVE Act I don't support.
And the SAVE Act is not yet a law. It doesn't appear that it's going to become law before the election, but we'll see. Steve, you had a hand in ALISON GREENE?
And I don't get my hand to work, so I just wanted
All
to
right.
jump in real
Well,
quick.
Allison was next, and then we'll go to Steve and/or John Brakey. Go ahead, Allison.
I just want to clarify about the SAVE Act, because there is something very important buried in the SAVE Act, which is that a woman has to have ID that matches her birth certificate. And according to the League of Women Voters, 83% of women change their last name when they marry. And 69 million American women may not have a birth certificate with their updated married legal name on it, and they would not be able to use their birth certificate to prove citizenship. So, as the League of Women Voters correctly points out, the SAVE Act does not include proof of name change or marriage certificates as acceptable proof of identity. So if Sunny, your wife, comes up and she has all of this, this ID that says the last name Wasserman, they could actually ask for her proof of citizenship, being her birth certificate, and her birth certificate may not say Wasserman on it. And so that's one of the things they're actually, the SAVE Act is likely to change things in Arizona and in every state in terms of it
Right.
make it
Well,
much more difficult for women to vote. So
it's
I just wanted to make
essentially
that clear.
it's a de
Thank you. Thank you,
facto,
Allison.
Yeah,
yeah, it's a de facto repeal of the 19th Amendment.
exactly.
That's about
And
which a number of evangelicals are actually directly advocating. So
and
this is the back door for that.
and what Ken and John and I are saying, it's like not only is it horrible that they're trying to pass this law, but the reality is that we have the NVRA and the HAVA, so the Help America Vote Act that was passed in 2002, the NVRA, the National Voting Rights Act. We have laws, the states have statutes on their books that we cannot get anybody to follow. So to Ken's point, what they're actually counting on is that the system is so complicated that nobody will be doing the watching. And so, for example, in my experience in 2024, Ken very clearly talked about the way the system is supposed to work, which is that my supervisor of elections was supposed to put in, these are all of the registered voters in the county, and the books were then closed. So those were the only people that were allowed to vote. What I found is I found precincts that weren't even on the book closing reports. So in other words, and this will be 5 people, but it's more important to talk about the systemic problem with the system, because the way the system works is that only the voters who are on the book closing are allowed to vote. In my county, there was something called 89.3, which had 5 voters in it, and they all had the same address. And what happened is when I was comparing, because I got plenty of public records and did the requests, when I compared the official book closing to the votes that were counted, there were people whose votes were counted who were not on the book closing, which should mean that they don't exist. When I went to that address, it was a UPS store. These were 5 people who were registered, and the only way that you can tell, get in contact with them, was to stake out the UPS store and see when somebody opened up that mailbox, which is probably why the county and the supervisor of elections said these cannot be verified as eligible legal voters. So I
Okay.
won't include them. But what the state did is they counted their votes anyway. 4 out of 5 of those voters had their votes counted according to the records by the state
So
themselves.
you're talking about ghost voting. John Steiner, which you've mentioned before, and very important, obviously. John Steiner, if you get a minute, you mentioned to me a voting rights group that we need to include in this discussion. If you can, if you want to jump on and tell us or post their link, that would be great, John. Thank you. Can I call on you, John?
Yes,
Go ahead, John Steiner, please.
Harvey, I'm working on it. I'll put it in. I'm doing some background research on who might come on, a lot of
Okay.
which I'm just sending to Allison.
All right, so this is a really clear, clarifying discussion here of the voting process, which is absolutely essential going forward. John, we'll have your group and you on at a later date, please, and because we need to cover all the bases here. Mike Hirsch and Steve Caruso, and then we're going to go to a discussion on data centers. This is incredibly important and clarifying. The question, we focused on Arizona and Allison's in Florida. What's with the rest of the states? And this disqualification of women, de facto disqualification of women is, it doesn't get any deeper than that, for God's sakes. Women are
Yeah,
actually a majority of the voters in this country.
yes, Sonny, and they won't be if the SAVE Act goes through. And also, it will make it even more difficult for young people to vote. And we've been trying really hard to get young people to participate in the process to overcome their cynicism, their well-founded cynicism about the system. And we're trying really hard to get people involve legal voters involved, and the SAVE Act does the opposite. It also makes it very difficult for people who don't have the means to get off work, to go to an office, to get paperwork done, to get a passport or the proper ID. It costs money. A lot of people don't have enough money for groceries, and they can't put gas in the car thanks to some of the policies that are going on now. So the SAVE Act is an anti-democracy act, an anti-republic act, not anti-republican, but it's anti-Republican women who want to vote, anti-Republican young people who want to vote, anti-older people who want to vote, and anti-poor people and people who are barely getting by. So it needs to be stopped right away. And Trump is making a huge push for it. And this is a nonpartisan, not-for-profit Zoom. I just want to make it very clear. But we absolutely know why Trump is trying to sabotage our democracy again, because that's what he does and that's what he's doing. And it's a mistake to underestimate him and to underestimate the people around him. They know what they're doing. And I just wanted to announce that my friend Mitch Jones is here
Oh, good.
to take us to the next doom
Right,
and
Mitch,
gloom
we'll get you.
topic.
Let's wrap this, but this is an incredibly important, obviously, core of our thing. I mean, we're covered in Arizona. We know the situation thanks to, and we can rest easier knowing that Ken Bennett and John Brakey are on the case in Arizona. That only leaves 49 other states, and God knows, and Allison's in Florida doing her
I'm in
best.
Florida, but I'm actually looking at other states, and Sunny, I have been and I have been getting the voter records from Ohio, for example, and I'm looking for problems in Ohio.
Well,
We're across the country.
let's point out something here, and Mr. Jones will get to you in a few minutes, but we absolutely want this discussion of data centers. It's a very big deal. But the situation, the root of these calls, we started these calls in 2020 as election protection primarily, and the reason was in 2004. We voted in Ohio and probably the rest of the country on machines that were owned and operated by the guy who was the chair of the Bush campaign for reelection, slight conflict of interest. And there was tremendous question about the verifiability of these voting machines. And I voted in Columbus on, a machine. I did not have a paper ballot. And also, I had to get my voter registration through because they refused. They didn't send me the stuff. I had to call the election board 4 times after voting in the same precinct for 20 years, and I finally got my credentials by using the magic words, "I'm with the media." Now that's not true of everybody else, but nonetheless. And so we had, beginning in 2004, and segueing from what Greg Palastad reported in Florida 2000, our primary advocacy was for hand-marked, hand-counted paper ballots. And in part due to the COVID, we have that now in America. We have 80% of the ballots in this country, including, of course, Arizona, going out by mail on paper and coming back by mail or delivered in person. It is actually a victory, a giant victory for hand-marked, hand-counted paper ballots. But as John and Ken and now Allison have pointed out, there are all sorts of potholes here. And a pothole being, we did legalize marijuana, so that potholes are now legal. But, the bottom line is that we have tremendous liabilities here with the system that we do have. Number one would be this situation of the women with their married names versus their birth names. And that would essentially negate the 19th Amendment. There's no doubt about that. And it's purposeful. There's no doubt about that. So we are going to continue. John Brakey, your work is spectacular. Ken Bennett, it's so great to have you, Allison.
Let me have a quick closing because I need to say something, okay?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Is that, Ken was talking about the 5 points. It is very important what he's bringing out. That's why it's important to get this book done, get Ken Bennett on the road, starting meeting with Secretary of States and showing them that the problems in elections may be complicated, but my God, the solutions are so goddamn simple. It's sickening that we're not doing it.
Right.
This digital image situation is a gift. We got redundancy.
Well,
What concern I have is that after building Abe with others, I know how the heist would go down. It would be
Right.
so easy
well,
because
next time
the
you're gonna,
ballot, the cast vote record is so vulnerable. It's just a friggin' spreadsheet. That's what it is. What do you want it to be, as an accountant would say? You
well,
know what I'm saying?
our next call, you're going to tell us how the election could be stolen, and we want, and Allison, you, Ken, and John will maybe we'll add Ray Lutz and a few others, and also this
Yeah.
organization that John Steiner has mentioned. We want to cover all the bases. It's
Well,
incredible.
this one final thought here is that you can read about the series on my Substack page. Just type in John Brakey Substack, and then you're going to see Ken Bennett all the way through it because he is the explainer.
Right. And
My apologies. My
So,
apologies, Sonny.
well, listen, you guys, this is absolutely essential. We can all rest assured now that Arizona is probably going to have a fair election, but there are other questions that are being raised. And they will have to explain, by the way, we did not envision when we first started in Ohio 2005 advocating, hand-marked, hand-counted paper ballots. We did not envision the technology that John Brakey introduced, which is scanning, digital scanning of the paper ballots, which allows you a faster hand count and gives you, I was about to say duplication of, the hand count with a digital count. Now, people have complained that the ballot scanners could in fact be hacked, and in fact they could be hacked. But, we still have the paper ballots. So we're going to come back next week at hopefully others will join us, and we're going to go deeper in to continue this because this is the work that gave birth to these calls. And thank you both, John and Ken. Please come back next week with Allison, and we'll add more and really cover these bases because I don't believe the SAVE Act is going to pass. But, I think there's been insufficient notice given to the America's women that this means to disenfranchise them. I mean, that is the core agenda item of the SAVE Act, which is to disenfranchise women. And I don't think that message has gotten out the way it needs to. So we will discuss that next week too. All right, you guys. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. We still got 68 people with us. And we're now going to go to the world of data centers. Oh my God. And with it, crypto. I assume, Mitch Jones, you're going to tell us that one of the chief functions of the data centers is to produce crypto, from which the guy in the White House has already hugely profited. I have seen there would be a great bumper sticker that says crypto equals crime. And that, crypto basically, the prime function of crypto is to facilitate crime. I don't know if you agree with that, but Mitch Jones, you're with Food and Water Watch. You have a great, great founder, Winona Howder, who I've known since she was born. And please tell us now what's going on with data center. I have read somewhere that people now, local neighborhoods oppose data centers more than nuclear power plants. So fill us in here, Mitch Jones. Tell us who you are, and let's hear the story.
Sure. Thank you, Sonny, for letting me join you, and I'll let Winona know that you've known her since birth. Yeah, we at Food and Water Watch are fighting data centers across the country, or data centers across the country. We were one of the first, if not the first, national organization to call for a moratorium across the country, a nationwide moratorium, and led a campaign last winter that had over 230 organizations from the grassroots up to national organizations calling on Congress to put a halt to new hyperscale data centers, which a week later, then Bernie Sanders issued his call for a moratorium, which he followed up with legislation this past spring. AOC has joined him and introduced her legislation a few weeks ago as a companion. We have worked with, like I said, with groups on the ground across the country who are fighting grassroots battles against data centers and winning. So far this year, over $130 billion of proposed data center projects have been rejected by local communities across the country. New York state legislature passed a moratorium bill. Another one was passed in Maine. Unfortunately, Janet Mills vetoed that right before she dropped out of the Senate race. Yeah, it was horrible. I'll give you a little bit of breaking news. I probably shouldn't say this. I'll get in trouble, but we understand Governor Hochul is going to issue an executive order on data centers tomorrow in New York State. So, we've been involved now for about a year, joining with the grassroots activists who have been campaigning for even longer to fight the data center industry, which is destroying communities across the country, whether you're suburban community and rural communities, sometimes even urban communities are being targeted for these gigantic data centers. I've already seen in the chat, people have put in some of the problems with them. They're highly destructive. It's just another extractive industry. To us, this data center quote unquote boom reminds us of the fight against fracking from 15 years ago, where industry came in, was an extractive industry, promised non-existent jobs, and left behind destruction and waste. So we've been fighting it now for quite a while, and frankly, in terms of public opinion, we're winning. You cited more people are opposed to data centers in the community than nuclear energy. I saw that as well. A plurality of Americans, and sometimes you'll see a poll that says a majority of Americans are now opposed to data centers coming to their communities. So the momentum is definitely on the side of those of us who are opposed to the construction of these hyperscale data centers. And you're right, Sonny, a lot of it is about crypto. And I agree with you. Crypto is basically a means of trying to circumvent law enforcement. It's one of the main reasons for it is money laundering, which, is problematic. So,
well, it's the one business skill that Donald Trump has proven himself adept at, because
yes.
he laundered all that money from the former Soviet Union in the 80s and got him out of bankruptcy. But we won't go there right now. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, he's obviously made billions off of it, while everybody else who invested along with him lost billions collectively. Somehow he profited, but everybody else who invested lost money. Somehow.
Well, the money he made had to come from somewhere, so
it did have to come from somewhere. That's right. But of course, it's also being used for other things. A lot of the computational power in data centers is being used for surveillance of us. These flock cameras that are coming up, being put up in communities across the country. It's being used for the special pricing that some stores are trying to have, where they will literally change the price based on who's looking at the product, because they have the data from your phone and they know that you're looking at a particular product and they know what price they can charge you. It's being used by the intelligence and defense agencies. One of the earliest venture capital investments in AI and therefore in data centers actually came from the CIA. I know. When I learned that, I was a little surprised as well. The CIA has a venture capital arm that invested very early in Silicon Valley AI.
Wait a minute, that's socialism. Are you saying that the federal government, of which the CIA is an agency, has been investing in private companies?
Yes, it has.
Is that the Eugene V. Debs wing of the federal government?
Yes, Debs, the famous CIA agent.
Okay.
But yeah, so and then of course the other thing it's being used for is cat memes on Instagram and all of these other things. But the The main reason why these huge data centers, and when I say huge, they are huge. A lot of the proposals now are for data centers that will use 1 gigawatt of electricity or more. And just to put that into context, the electrical demand of San Francisco is approximately 1 gigawatt. So we're talking about data centers that will have an electric power demand of San Francisco or larger. I saw this morning there's a new proposal for a 5 gigawatt data center.
Oh,
So that would be the electric demand of 5 San Franciscos. They're just huge. They're unfathomable. But the main reason that we're building these is because the tech oligarchs in Silicon Valley have this vision for what they call artificial general intelligence, which is their pipe dream of being able to recreate human consciousness on a machine. And in order to do that, they need immense amounts of computational power, which means they have to build these huge data centers in order to have that amount of computation available to them. Whereas if they merely wanted to steal working class jobs and have robotics, and again, merely is in scare quotes there, you don't need this amount of power. You don't need these size of data centers. So ironically, in China, although they're building data centers, they're not building them as large because China is focused on robotics. Our for-profit AI companies are focused on, large language models, chat bots, general intelligence, and that's causing them to create push to create these huge multi-gigawatt data centers, which are really destructive for the communities they're built in.
well, just for a thumbnail, Carl Grossman's on the line with us. He and I have written a piece about Donald Trump's taking over the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, but a gigawatt is the thumbnail that you use to describe the output of a large nuclear power plant.
Yeah.
The power plants generally are slightly more, but 1,000 megawatts is a gigawatt, and that's basically the currency of big nukes.
Yep.
And that's why nuclear power, one of the reasons why nuclear power and data centers, the issues are so thoroughly linked.
Right.
But so the whole data center motif you're saying is on two levels. On the one level, well, describe exactly what these data centers. Now, you've said that on the one hand, these hideous monsters that are running Silicon Valley want to recreate human consciousness. So that's the mega picture, but the standard operating picture is what? One of these data centers, the product that they're geared to produce, what is its goal?
Well, I mean, simple answer to that is to profit the billionaires that already own the companies. But getting beyond, I mean, that simply is all it's about.
Right.
But it's a variety of different things. They claim, and it's a claim with little evidence, that what they're doing is providing a tool that's going to help scientific research. That's the thing they always trot out whenever you confront them about this product. They say, well, we're gonna cure cancer, or we're gonna cure Alzheimer's, or pick your disease of choice that you want to see cured, and they're gonna say they're gonna do that, which is
Can I when will they cure moral bankruptcy? Sorry, I couldn't resist. Go ahead.
yeah, well, that's a case of Dr. Heal thyself and for them. But this is what they trot out to try to make people believe that they're being altruistic with their product. But really what it is about is they're gaining more control and more power within our culture. It's about setting up a system whereby they mine data from us every day because we carry these, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I've got an Apple Watch on, I use a cell phone. They monitor us through these devices. They collect the data. That data they feed into their algorithms, which then spits out information about us. I already mentioned where they can do this targeted pricing in a store because they know what you're standing in front of because they have GPS, or they have a system in the store that geolocates you when you walk in. They know what you're looking at, and they can alter the price based on what you've purchased on Amazon or any other website, based on what your reported income is, if they have that information, which, we give that information out all the time when you're looking for a credit card or other, other your taxes, things they can get their hands on to feed information. So it's
Well, there's one thing that
surveillance.
one place that they're really known to do that is on airline tickets.
Yes.
If you're shopping for an airline ticket, they will jump the price on you, if they know who you are.
Right. Yeah, they definitely will. But what the main fear is the development or the additional capacity that it gives for surveillance. I was talking with somebody else on a podcast earlier today about this, and there is some concern that with flock cameras, with our phones being in our cars, and with most cars, new cars, having GPS, having links to Wi-Fi, having links already built in, especially if it's an electric vehicle, that this information will be fed directly to insurance companies, and they will be able to change your insurance rates based on information that they're gleaning from how your car is being driven on a day-to-day basis or where you're driving. So they can even do it by the community that you're in. Now, insurance already jacks up prices based on the community you're in. I live in inner city Baltimore. I pay more for car insurance already just based on that address. But if they see that I'm driving around in certain neighborhoods, they can jack up the prices. And so there's a real concern that what we're doing every day when we use these electronic devices is we're feeding information to these companies. They're running it through algorithms, and they're using it to then feed back to us. It's kind of a circular training that's going on. We train the algorithm to know us, and then the algorithm uses that information to try to convince us to purchase certain products, to spend money in certain areas, to increase profits for those companies.
Now, these data centers where they do this evil calculation require huge amounts of electricity and water.
Yeah.
Now, so far, all of the data centers that I've seen from the air, these giant one-story warehouses, none of them have solar panels on them. And none of them have the least bit of concern for the environment that I know of, but maybe you know better.
Well, they can't put solar panels on the roof because of the heat generated by the computers within the buildings themselves. So the rooftop needs to be used for cooling, which is why you don't see solar panels on the roofs. They will claim that they are going to power some of these by renewables. Basically, in order to do that, they're going to have to tap into the grid and purchase renewable electricity that way. When they talk about building renewables for any of these data centers, I did a calculation a few months ago. I looked at how many acres it would take of solar panels to generate enough electricity to keep a 1.2 gigawatt data center going. And I came up, there's ballpark figures, right? Nobody has a precise number, but using the numbers, I came up with a range of 10,000 to 20,000 acres of solar panels for one of these 1.2 gigawatt data centers. Now, the data centers being proposed are roughly a lot of the big ones are 500 acres. So they would have to find 10 to 20,000 acres elsewhere to put solar panels if they wanted to actually have renewable energy, not from the grid. In other words, not taking it from those of us who are already using it in order to power these data centers. So the industry likes to pretend that they're going to eventually run data centers on renewable energy. Some of the industry, I should say, likes to pretend that. But it's not really feasible for them to do so the way that they are currently set up. And what they're going to be doing, and this actually already happened late last year or earlier this year in Washington State, where there was an auction for, I believe it was wind power, and a utility that was bidding to try to buy that power to give to smaller commercial and residential customers got outbid by a data center and had to go buy fossil fuel power for the communities that they were serving because the data center was able to outbid them for that wind electricity. So they're already driving up the costs of renewable energy for the rest of us, and at the same time taking that renewable energy away from us and forcing us to have to use fossil fuel energy.
Now, these data centers are also very noisy. Steve Caruso lives in the vicinity where they're trying to build one. Steve, do you want to jump in here? And then Dorothy Reich.
Yeah, well, New Albany,
And Carl
Ohio.
Grossman is waiting in reserve here. Go ahead, Steve.
You're familiar with New Albany, Ohio. They have Google and Facebook data centers across the street from each other. How convenient. Facebook moved in 2017. It's still up on their webpage, and I saved it in archive.org. But they said, oh, we're going to run renewable energy, and it's all going to be clean and green, and we're going to support the community with our energy and so forth. And here we are now today. They've got 6 white tents that are bigger than football fields just installed. They've got a sound wall that's going up, looks like 100 feet. They've got at least 6 jet fired or gas fired jet turbine generators back there. It's ridiculous. Why is all this needed? It's some piped up, hyperbolized computer thing that everybody's struggling to outcompete each other. And who suffers in the meanwhile? People aren't benefiting from this. We're not benefiting. They're taking our data. We own it. It's our data. So maybe if we stop supporting Facebook, get off Facebook, minimize your Google footprint, minimize everything you can, and just get off the dang grid if you have to. This is crazy. We
Yes.
have a solar field down near us that was installed. It's 550 acres. It produces 107 megawatts of energy. So multiply that out. And that's how I did my calculation. I was listening to you saying, what you needed. But here, supposedly the data center at Facebook is going to be 400 megawatts. Well, I can't believe they have 2 24-inch gas lines feeding those turbines. And you can imagine the low-level earth-shaking sound when all those things are running and the cooling fans that are in the building and everything else. It's unsustainable. I mean, both physically, biologically, and the community-wise. People are going to move out of New Albany. That was Epstein and Wexter's big paradise. They've got the Easton Mall where everybody goes shopping and this whole thing, and it's just going to be destroyed. I'm not, saying that I'm all for their community out there. It seemed kind of ridiculous at the time, but hey, I respect people. But
Okay.
enough to say that this is crazy what they're doing with these data centers. Thanks. Bye.
Yes, it is. Okay. And as Mitch has pointed out, people are rising up to stop them. Dorothy Reich?
So I saw an article the other day where they were going to try to convince this town that they would put solar on their rooftops. And so then their rooftop solar would power the data center to such an extent that they would actually get money back.
Well, we have just run into an instance with rooftop solar in LA. This terrible fire in Boyle Heights apparently was complicated by the solar panels on a building there that did not have microinverters. And so those of us who advocate renewable energy, especially rooftop solar, we're going to have to take pause and really look at the technology here before we install stuff that is going to be, bite us, come back to bite us. We had a similar situation. There was a battery storage at Moss Landing in California that burned. The idiots running the place had no idea what they were doing. It was lithium batteries, which are very, very toxic. And that's also a bad situation. So, we are in the process of converting lithium batteries to sodium. The whole industry is going now. We'll have a discussion about that. Maybe Carl and I will talk about it in a minute. But, Mitch, this stuff on data centers is mind-boggling. Dorothy, thanks for that heads up. We still have almost 70 people with us. So, Mitch, where is this fight going now? Food and Water Watch has a great multi-decade track record. What are we going to do here?
Well, we last month launched a nationwide coalition, the Stop Data Centers Coalition, which has over 500 organizations across the country. Again, it's from the grassroots up to national organizations involved. We at Food and Water Watch have a volunteer network that has a data center team working to help activists on the ground across the country fight back against data center proposals in their communities. We have a toolkit on our website I see Mike has put that in the chat a couple times, but if you go to foodandwaterwatch.org, you can find our data center toolkit that tells you how to fight back against data centers in your community. Or you can just reach out to us. Somebody from our team would get back to you as well. We've already helped a number of communities across the country stop data centers. And the fight really is taking place. The heart of the fight is in local communities where the proposals are coming up and where people are coming together across the political spectrum to fight. Mike mentioned earlier, this is nonpartisan. The fight against data centers is also nonpartisan. It connects from MAGA Republicans to Bernie-crats to beyond those two, and everybody in between. You can find people who oppose data centers either because they're opposed to AI itself, they're opposed to crypto, or they're just concerned about what data centers are doing to communities. But also, the fight goes beyond that. As I mentioned before, there are state-level attempts to put moratoria in place, to put temporary halts so we can actually do some real research and determine if this industry can even be regulated in a way that makes it less harmful, because I don't think you could ever make it unharmful. I mentioned it's passed in Maine and was vetoed. It passed in New York. We're waiting to see what the governor does. Proposals have been in at least a dozen other states across the country. And then I also mentioned Bernie Sanders and AOC have federal legislation to put in a moratorium on data centers that is actually open-ended. There is no set end date for that. It requires certain actions to be taken by the federal government to regulate the industry before the data center moratorium nationally would be lifted. So the most important things people can do is engage in your local community if you have a data center coming, but also just get in touch with your local elected officials and let them know you don't want data centers. You don't want them in your community, but you also don't want them in the community next door. This can't remain for some people a NIMBY issue. It can't just be not in my backyard. It's got to be in nobody's backyard. And we have to organize across the country and push our elected officials to stop believing the BS being peddled by this industry about jobs, about their ability to offset the cost of electricity or their ability to cut back on water usage, and all of the other lies they tell us to try to get us to believe their dystopian vision of the future is not going to harm us. And we have to start working in our communities and educating all of our elected officials all the way up to the federal level that this is something that's going to get them in trouble with voters if they don't listen to us. And we've already seen that. We've already seen this year elected officials losing elections because of this issue, because of their support for data centers. An entire town council in Missouri lost re-election because they voted for a data center. The fight back is real, and I just encourage everybody to do it. Start at the local level and then work your way up to the state and the federal level, because we need every elected official to hear about the opposition to this.
Well, great. We've got George Anderson and Vina Conley. One quick question. Have the local communities that have risen up to stop these data centers been successful in stopping them?
Yeah, dozens of communities across the country have been successful. There have been local moratoria passed. There have been individual projects that have been rejected. There have been slightly more subtle efforts. East Fishkill, New York just passed requiring a proposed data center to do an environmental study that nobody believes the company is actually going to want to do, and therefore they're effectively killing the project because they're requiring it to report information it doesn't want to report about its environmental impact. But communities are across the country winning these fights. And, like I said earlier, over $130 billion worth of projects have already been rejected this year.
If AI is so smart, why can't they figure out how to do it without destroying the earth? George Anderson and then Steve Caruso again. I think Vina Conley had a hand. George, go ahead, George Anderson.
Okay.
And we'll get to Carl. Carl, stick with us, please. We are going to talk about the NRC.
Data centers are not industries. They are high-speed algorithmic parasites. They're organizations whose main purpose is to provide wealth to very few within this society. Until this society is able to claim data centers and quantum computing and the marriage thereof as a public utility to benefit America and the world, we're barking up the wrong tree. I dare say that 33% of the data centers that are currently on the books are a total waste of money and energy. They are duplication of services, which are only feeding the benefit of a very few. So thanks for listening.
Well, George, if you can put that in print and give us some links to follow that up, that's very important and very well spoken. And you have a great voice for radio. I hope you get your own show one day.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I have a great face for radio, but your voice is really good. Okay, Mila Reeson, and then I think Vina Colley had a hand at some point. Vina or Mila, either one. Well, go ahead, Mila. I don't see Vina now.
Okay, well, I just
Oh,
got
there she is.
back from renewing my driver's license at the California Department of
No,
Motor
I'm
Vehicles.
on mute.
And I have to say, the AI is pretty stupid in the the way that it's set up for the Department of Motor Vehicles for California. I spent close to 2 hours talking to a very stupid artificial intelligence trying to set up an appointment. And I gave up and drove over to the office. And it was just this ridiculous circular
Right.
nonsense. I actually recorded some of it. It's just because it was so unbelievable. But they've also automated the actual office, the brick and mortar office for the Department of Motor Vehicles. So it's a strange new world, and as I said, the AI just not smart. Very
Exactly.
glitchy.
Exactly right. Thank you for that. You know, Hal on the computer on 2001, he wasn't all that smart either, you know. As you remember, tried to take over from Dave, but he was an idiot, Hal. Vina Conley, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had any suggestions for us because the DOE and DOD, Trump, Japan, and the banks want to put the largest data center here at the Portsmouth Gas Diffusion Plant. So I was wondering if you had any help for us, especially when there's no jobs here and they're selling it as jobs for this community.
Mitch, she's in Southern Ohio.
In Southern Ohio, we've had actually one of our staff on the ground in Ohio fighting against the data center proposal in his hometown. What I would say, Vina, is go to our website, reach out to us. We can have somebody get in touch with you to talk with you specifically about that project and the steps that you and your neighbors should take to fight back against it. But I think the best thing to do would be to reach out to us and we'll actually have somebody get on the phone with you and talk to you.
Did you
That's
put
great.
Could you put
Yeah.
that on an email for me or in chat so I can get it?
Yeah.
She's in Portsmouth, Ohio, where they have the diffusion facility, and I don't know what Portsmouth did to deserve all that stuff, but you know,
Well, I'd like to tell him that they have the centrifuge running, doing high assay, low enriched uranium, and they've been doing it since 23. And that fuel is going to feed these small modular reactors that will feed the data centers.
Well, now Vine has opened the door on another issue. We've got Carl Grossman with us, the small modular reactors. This whole push for new nuclear power is totally linked to the data center issue, right, Mitch? I mean, you know, we know, and what has happened, and Carl and I put out a piece that went up at Counterpunch and freepress.org and elsewhere, Daily Kos, about how Donald Trump, with this new Supreme Court decision, the Slaughter decision, which is aptly named.
Harvey, your audio died. You're muted. You're not muted, but your audio just kind of fell off the cliff there. I don't know what happened.
Can you hear me now?
Nope. Can't hear you.
I can hear him.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
I can
try
hear you.
unplugging your mic, or it was like some kind of electronic.
Steve,
I
it
can
might be
hear
on
him.
your
Kinda
end. Everybody else
crackly.
can hear him. Steve, everybody else can hear Sonny.
Can
Oh,
you?
maybe
Yeah.
other people can hear you. It might be me. Sorry.
Yeah. Can you hear me, everybody? Raise your hand. I love when people ask if you can hear me. If you can't hear me.
Yes.
Anyway, okay, so I'll proceed. So Donald Trump was firing the head of regulatory agencies. They took it to court, and the Supreme Court says that the President of the United States, currently Donald Trump apparently, has somehow the legal power to fire without cause the heads of regulatory agencies. Now, that clearly includes the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And Trump has already fired a nuclear regulatory commissioner. He fired a guy who had been the chair, and he was a Democrat, but he was very pro-nuclear. And without cause, Trump just kicked him out the door. Now, that basically means that Donald Trump is running the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which oversees the safety, allegedly, of our nuclear power plants, which are part of the major push here for data centers. It's all intertwined. And so, Lynn, do you want to say something before I call on Carl here on this issue? Lynn Mystic Healer? No. Okay. So, Carl Grossman, who is one of the great veterans of in the anti-nuclear movement, and I co-wrote a piece that has appeared, as I say, at Counterpunch, freepress.org, Smirking Chimp. I assume will be a Nation of Change at some point, Daily Kos, wondering how we can have a nuclear industry that is being overseen by a guy who's made tangible investments directly in a company called TAE in California through his True Social. That he is now regulating a technology of which he owns a substantial share. Now, I assume that extends also to the data center industry. But Carl, do you want to comment on that reality?
Yeah, well, Trump is pushing nuclear to a fairly well. There's the article Sonny and I wrote. He's all over it. He's over the regulatory portion. It's now with the $6 billion investment with this fusion company. He's involved in the development of new kinds of nuclear power. Here we write this fleecing of America in regards to nuclear power, which follows. We put it in the context of the other acts fleecing the United States that Trump and his sons are so deeply embedded in.
Well, this is also wrapped up, Mitch Jones, with the proposals to restart 3 Mile Island Unit 1 and Palisades in Michigan. And there's one in Iowa, I think they want to restart. And these are all linked to the push for data centers. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. And they're also trying to restart in New York as well, Indian Point. And, they're trying to build new nuclear in a lot of places as well. There's actually a pro-nuclear package of bills coming up in the Energy and Commerce Committee in the House tomorrow. And the revival, quote unquote, revival of nuclear energy as a policy prescriptive is definitely tied to the growth of data centers. You've seen both of them become extremely popular in Congress over the past couple of years. With 3 Mile Island, they've changed its name. I forget what greenwashing name they've given it, but with 3 Mile Island, it's specifically to power a Microsoft data center.
It's called the Happy Face New Nuclear Plant.
Exactly. But that one has already been approved to come back online. There are proposals, like you said, in other places as well, Ohio, Iowa, and like I mentioned, New York. In addition to the proposals for the small modular reactors, which was mentioned earlier, where which I refer to as distributed nukes, because I think it's a much more accurate description of what we're talking about. You know, we talk about distributed solar, distributed renewables. Well, this is distributed nukes. You know, do you want a quote unquote small nuclear power plant coming to your neighborhood to power a data center? So the two industries are linked. Data centers see nuclear as a way to get the large amounts of electricity they need quickly if it's restarting an existing plant, or in their pipe dreams having small modular reactors that they can just build on the campus of the data centers that they're proposing, in place of the natural gas plants which they're currently building on those campuses to power their data centers when they're not tapping into the grid. So they are definitely linked. It's both restarting shuttered nuclear plants, proposals to build new nuclear plants, as well as doing the SMR distributed nukes at the sites themselves.
Wow. And of course, you know, if you look at the actual numbers of what it would cost to do these small reactors, they're really not talking about small reactors in any numbers until 2030. But, you know, the numbers are at the get-go 3 to 4 times as expensive as solar and wind. But as you point out, you know, the idea for these guys would be to have the small reactor right on the campus next door to the and so you know, in your campaigns, you need to note, I think, that there is no insurance, of course, for commercial reactors, and now Donald Trump is essentially, and tell me if I'm overstating, Carl, Donald Trump is now essentially the sole regulator of the commercial nuclear power industry in the United States. Is
Yeah,
that right?
the Nuclear Regulatory Commission was always the nuclear rubber stamp commission, but now it's beyond that. You have Trump, who thinks nuclear is fantastic, loves
Well, he's
it,
invested
pushing
in
it. And it's not just Trump. If it was just Trump, maybe we can get rid of, hopefully, Trump. But for example, in New York State, where I'm speaking from, where I live, the governor, Kathy Hochul, has publicly declared, this is online, I've embraced nuclear power, talking about 5 megawatts of nuclear power, 5 big nuclear power plants, gigawatts in New York State, and talking about data centers. And I just might note for people in other places of the country, Food and Water Watch has been extremely active in New York State in trying to stop Kathy Hochul. It's a group that, and these days, some of the green groups aren't very green any longer, and have compromised, have capitulated on the nuclear power issue. And Food and Water Watch is now in the lead in challenging nuclear power. So what we're hearing from Mitch today, it's great to hear, and it's a great organization.
Well, Mitch will send you the piece that Carl and I put out, and
please
you
do.
can resend it, please.
Yeah.
Lynn, Mr. Keeler, did you want to say something, Lynn, Mr. Keeler, on this? We still have 66 people.
Okay, yes, thank you. Love you guys. Thank you for all you're doing. I'm putting as much as I can that I've downloaded and been around. I helped start Veterans for Peace and Code Pink, Long Stories, and Healthcare for All Oregonians. Anyway, I put a bunch in. The Union of Concerned Scientists say no to nuclear power. They've got all kinds of information, really critical. The top scientist on this whole planet, physicist, is Nassim Haramein, and he's got a YouTube. He has he's like in peer review. He's beyond Einstein. He's got the information. No, he is. Honestly, they even say that his peer review scientists are.
Does that mean it's a 2x MC squared?
Heck, I don't get that either. But anyway, he does have the proof, and he started Resonance Academy. This goes along with the movement to the Earth just being a house in the multiverse, and the Vatican Nation helping shift all militaries stand down, start to clean up the mess. All militaries have to stand down together now. The Vatican Nation has And that's why they're afraid to disclose on the ships, you know, the spaceships, because of the power, right? Dr.
What
Stephen.
is the Vatican nation?
Oh, it's the biggest nation on the planet, most widespread. The Vatican, you know, that's.
Oh, the Vatican. You mean Pope Leo?
Yeah. I mean, they're worldwide. They have 80 trillion in their banking systems, and they're capable.
Has Pope Leo made a statement about nuclear power?
It doesn't matter. What he's concerned about with and what he's putting out there is the rebuild of global citizens. Red, yellow, black, and white. We're all connected. We got to rebuild the planet. So I don't even know if he knows alternative, you know, or energy sources. But Nassim Hariam does.
He's from Chicago. He should know the issue. I wonder if anybody's ever, Mitch, I wonder.
But the top scientists, the one other, let me get to two more. The Union of Concerned Scientists, okay, those guys know, they said there no way, nuclear, no, and no. And then also to Patrick Wood, he's technocracy. I think agree a lot, Stephen. When I think of him, his name is Patrick Wood, and he's Technocracy News and Trends. He's really critical. He's got information about unbabies and all kinds of weird stuff that was going on in the Epstein. Down below in the ranch, and his science background in Technocracy News and Trends is his website. I put it in there.
Will you post the link for that? And Carl and I'll send our piece.
It's in there. It's really critical. But he also talks about unbabies, some kind of cloning thing they're messing with. And then the big thing is people are not, there's over 600,000 robots already. Okay. Sophia, you can look her up. You've got to tell people. Sophia is the first citizen robot out of Saudi Arabia. It's online. You have to, you know, okay. And when you start to show people the money going into the data centers for robots, and not just citizen robots, but the super soldiers, they are frightening as you put them with drones and hate and war. It's too stupid to even believe it's happening. Okay, it's nauseously idiotic. Okay.
Okay, last one, Len. Last one.
Okay, and then let's see. The other one is Greg Braden. Have you guys all heard about him? He went from science and working in the Department of Defense and high tech to spirituality, to God codes, to people, to humans and our power as a human.
Okay.
So it's Greg Braden official, and he's got the information on the transhuman, the next side of what they want to do to humans. It's ugly. It's ugly. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Len. You gave us a whole lot. We really appreciate that, Len. Thank you so much.
There's lots. You guys are capable. Thank God that you're here. Thank you.
Well, thank God anyway. Thank you.
Shine light on it, grab their money, and start to clean up the mess, and let's rebuild the planet as one house in the multiverse.
We got
Beautiful,
it.
Lynn. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We're going to go back to Dorothy Ray Lutz. You're often with us, but you can't get your hand up. Did you want to say anything, Ray Lutz?
Thank you for calling on me. I don't have anything about this particular subject, but I am concerned about the data centers. I'm concerned about the firings that we had. And I don't know if you've already mentioned the firings of the Election Assistance Commission, that Trump just fired all of the commissioners. Now, is it the end of the world? Not really, because they weren't a very good, productive commission, but the staff is still there, and it's not good to fire, everybody. And
Ray, real quick, Mitch just let me know that he has to go pretty soon. So if we can
let Mitch talk.
Wait. Dorothy Wright. We'll come back to you, Ray. Dorothy Wright had a hand. She may want to say something to Mitch.
Yeah. So a couple of things. First of all, I didn't know if everything went by so fast just now, but they have robot soldiers. I don't know if you're aware, they're fighting in Ukraine, and they can just roll up to a group of soldiers and just kill them all. So that's going on. Also, I just want to mention, I read a book called Stop the World by Theo Baker. It's about what went on in Stanford when the president of Stanford
Dorothy, like I was saying, Mitch has to go, but we'll come right back to you after Mitch, if that's all right.
Excuse me? Let me finish.
Okay,
What's going on at Stanford? Excuse me. What's going on at Stanford is horrific. It's not just that this president got fired. These VCs are buying all these brilliant young Stanford students. They're giving them millions of dollars for any cockeyed idea that they have. They're getting some of them to actually quit and just go to work for them. And it's a terrifying situation up there. And we need, we all need to be aware of what's going on.
Thanks,
Okay, that's
Dorothy.
good. Thank you, Dorothy. Anything else you want to say? Dorothy?
Yeah, she muted herself, so we'll
Okay.
come back to Dorothy. I'm sure she has more to say.
All right, Mitch, you need to go.
Unmute again.
So
I don't know. Did you hear what I said about Stanford?
Yes.
We sure did, and it's alarming. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Now, Mitch has to go, so
And
we'd
then we'll
like
come
to
back
have
to you,
Mitch.
Dorothy and Ray.
Yeah, we'll come right back to you guys.
Mitch?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for having me here again. And Carl, thanks for those kind words. We've been fighting nuclear up in New York too. We've been fighting, as you mentioned, we've been standing up to the governor, and I can tell you she does not like us these days, which is fine. That's not a problem. But yeah, I just again want to encourage everybody, if you hear about a data center coming to your community, reach out, get the information to organize, to fight it, and make sure all of your elected officials know, educate your neighbors about what these centers actually mean for your community, not only increase water rates or electricity rates, but also actually increased water rates. Not only are they taking our water, not only are they converting agricultural and woodland to industrial purposes, they're polluting local communities. One issue that people haven't even really broached yet is the construction jobs are bringing man camps to communities, which are increasing crime in local communities, just like happened with fracking. It is just another extractive industry that's coming in to pull out wealth and leave behind waste and destruction. But it is an industry that can be stopped. It is being stopped. And if we continue to band together and organize on the ground, we really can win these fights. We're proving it across the country at the grassroots level. And I want to thank everybody for letting me come on and talk with you about it.
Well, let me just put out one number here. In 1974, when we started fighting nuclear power and we coined the phrase no nukes at Montague, Massachusetts, where they wanted to build a nuclear plant, Richard Nixon said there'd be 1,000 nuclear reactors in commercial in the US by the year 2000. In the year 2000, there are 104. So how many data centers are they now proposing?
It's hard to even get an actual number because nobody will agree on what a definition for what should be counted is. But there are hundreds that are being proposed across the country already, with more in the planning stages.
So if the no nukes movement is a precursor or a template, then we can expect to defeat 90% of these data centers, but even that won't be enough. But that's a good start. Okay.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Sonny, and thank you, everybody.
All right, Mitch, come back to us at some
I will
point.
definitely do so.
Okay,
Definitely,
man.
whenever you want.
Take care and give
All
my
right.
best to Winona.
I will definitely do so. When I talk to
All
her
right.
tomorrow, I'll let her know. All right. Thanks,
Take
Sonny.
care. Take care. No nukes. Bye-bye. Okay, Dorothy Reich, and then we're going to go back to Ray and Carl Grossman. We got 16 minutes before we toke up.
So this is off topic, but I just wanted to let everybody know that the big article in Drop Site. Remember ALEC years ago with a legislative exchange commission? Well, now they've got one that's sponsored by Israel.
Okay.
So it's set up in Florida, fortunately, because Florida has a big sunshine law, and so Dropsite was able to get all the information about this. But they're going to be having a Dropbox where people can put in legislation, pro-Israel legislation, and other states can go to the Dropbox and pull it out and get it passed in their states.
Okay.
So,
all right. Thank you, Greg. Carl Grossman, did you have anything further to say about Donald Trump and the NRC? And then we're going to go to Dave Saltman.
Yeah, and let me stress too, it's not just Hochul in New York. Democratic governors all over this country have been drinking the nuclear Kool-Aid, and they're not aware, or maybe they are aware, of the lethal dangers, the deadly dangers of nuclear power. But at this point, there's this push for what they call a a nuclear renaissance, very much pegged as was stressed on data centers, but it's very much about big money looking to make bigger money.
Well, are the Democrats sufficiently aware that they're pushing a technology that's completely under the thumb, right down to the valves and the circuits of Donald Trump? That Donald Trump is now 100% control of nuclear regulation. Do any of the Democrats understand that?
It seems to me they don't. Seems
I
to
think
me.
it's our job to inform them. Okay. Dave Saltman raised his hand, and then
All
we'll get back to
regulations,
Ray
by the
Lutz.
way. All
What's
regulation.
that?
He's in charge of all regulation. Oh.
Yes.
Or Susie Shannon.
Yes, Donald Trump is now in charge of all regulation. That will make a great bumper sticker that will scare the hell out of people. Drive off the road if they see that. Dave Saltman, did you want to jump in? Then we'll go to Myla and Ray. Mike first.
I'm no expert by any means on the data centers, but I am a regular reader of the New York Times. And in today's paper, there is a massive article about a gigantic heist. I don't know if you've seen this. And the point, they make the point, and I never had even thought about this until today, that many of these data centers already exist. We're not talking about some future event. They're here today, and they're running American businesses, particularly high tech. For example, and this is, like I say, I'm just repeating what I read in the newspaper. 80% of Amazon's business, the Amazon AWS, the centerpiece of Amazon's business, they make the point that Amazon, yeah, that's it. Amazon is not a delivery service. It's not anything like the bookstore I remember from 25 years ago. 80% of Amazon's business is data centers. We are way behind the curve on this, folks.
Okay.
Oh, I know.
I know, Dave, you were at Jeff Bezos's wedding. Did you have a chance to talk to him about that?
I've never met Mr. Bezos, but
Okay.
I gotta say, I was a big admirer of his because I thought, what a genius to take the book business, which was in the dumper, and recreate it from scratch. I thought, like, this guy is truly a business genius. He used to work for D.E. Shaw, which is known for this kind of super brilliant business ideas. But let me tell you, we are so far behind on this. It's crazy. Read this article.
I think that, David, you're right. And probably all the great ideas attributed to Jeff Bezos came from his wife, Mackenzie Scott, who was a published author.
Married long before they were married.
Yeah, and that
the guy.
we want her on the call. We want her on the call. So if you can get Mackenzie Scott to join us and talk about the book business, we really like it. Anything else, Dave?
Well, I'm glad you picked up that clue about the crypto, because that is really scary to me. The fact that data centers can actually simply be a cover for crypto mining, which requires massive amounts of computing power. That's what it is. So and as we all know, I think we all know, the only use of crypto is crime.
Yeah, there you go. Ray Lutz and then Myla, and then we're almost out of time, folks. We still have God knows how many, 52 people with us. That's fantastic. There is still an attention span in America. Ray and then Myla, and then Mike and Dorothy and Nicole.
I'll comment on this crypto thing. The crypto the bottom has sort of fallen out of that market, and the crypto miners, I know they've set up a lot of these centers to do mining, and they a lot of times do have power generation right there because there wasn't enough power to do it. But it's a really stupid thing to do. The crypto mining is just searching for a number, a random number. And if you can match it, you get to then put the block onto the blockchain. And I mean, it's an insanity to require this sort of power consumption just to put a block on the blockchain. That's what it is. And they say, and then they get paid for it. But now the pay is low, so low that the crypto miners can't make it. And so that's why it's the bottom sort of falling out of the crypto industry. But I'll tell you, my own experience with AI and stuff is I just think that the hype, people are going to see through the hype pretty soon. I think it's happening now. Like they've now started to rehire people because they can't replace all of the white collar workers or anything. AI has no creativity. It can't think outside the box. It doesn't come up with any new ideas. It will just do cookie cutter stuff and cookbook type stuff, but it does it very well and it can be helpful. But it's, the pie in the sky in these big data centers that they can control everything is just, I don't think it's going to pan out. And I think what we're going to end up with is hopefully a bunch of just empty data centers because they find out they're not that useful and it's going to turn over to be done locally. And that will mean that we're not going to spend that kind of, that we're not going to be, think about it, generate electricity and then turn it into heat at that spot just to heat up the environment. That is the most insane thing you can think of.
We're going to have it. Ray, you're going to come back next week, please. And we're going to dive deeper into AI if you can.
Yeah, I should be able to come back next week. Sure.
Yeah, I want to get anybody else. We want to have a deeper discussion of AI.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for that. And we're almost out, right? So we got to go and smoke some pot, which is the opposite of AI. That's official and real intelligence. Myra, and then Mike and Dorothy and Nicole. Myra?
So what I want to say kind of dovetails with what Ray just brought up, and also what Carl was talking about. The Democrats who are supporting nuclear power. In New York, it's not only the governor, it's senators, Democratic senators, Democratic congresspeople, people who identify as progressive in many regards, that are also advocating for the expansion of nuclear power. Kirsten Gillibrand in New York. Her son is involved in the crypto industry, and she passed legislation that makes it easier for the crypto industry to purport to be legitimate. And she also supports the expansion of what she calls advanced nuclear power. And Carl, I know that you've caught on to that terminology, which is also used by Hochul, calling it advanced. And then in Arizona, we have the two senators, senator who was an astronaut, Kelly, and Eric Swalwell's best friend, Ruben Gallego, who are both promoting nuclear power and saying that not only should we keep the very dangerous Palo Verde nuclear power plant in Arizona open, but they're also saying that we need to add to it by having these so-called small nuclear reactors or advanced nuclear reactors sited on the same site with the Palo Verde nuclear power plant, which evaporates 27,000 gallons of water every minute of every day in the desert. And when I talked to a candidate who is backed by Progressive Democrats of America, who just yesterday, and asked her about nuclear power, she's so good on so many issues, and yet she said she didn't want to lead me on. She really knew very little about it, and she was going to leave it up to the scientists. Well, unfortunately, which scientists that she leaves it up to is really critical here. And unfortunately, there are just so many Democrats who are otherwise progressive who are buying in. So anyway, that's
Well, when they find out and they read Carl's article and mine that Donald Trump is the sole regulator of nuclear power, maybe they'll have second thoughts.
we
We
hope.
we hope. Thank you, Mila. Mike Hurst, Dorothy Reich, Nicole, and then we're out.
I wanted to thank you, Mila, for sounding that alarm. And basically, it's not just Democrats, it's also environmentalists who have
Right.
gotten on the nuclear bandwagon and are spreading damaging and dishonest nuclear propaganda. We have lost so much ground to the propagandists, to the nuclear industry. A lot of people, whether it's NPR or a lot of people who claim to speak for the left, are parroting nuclear propaganda. And it's not enough for us to sit around here and talk about it and complain about it. We really need to get out and educate people a lot more than we have been. We do a lot of talking to each other. We do a lot of preaching to the choir. We do a lot of very granular discussion of the threats of nuclear power. A lot of that, we do that very, very well. What we do a really piss poor job is getting outside of our cocoon and talking to people. And we have not been able to shut down nuclear power plants that are on earthquake faults. We have not been able to shut down nuclear plants that have already melted down. We have not been able to stop starting nuclear plants that have already melted down. We can't really expect these politicians who barely know how to tie their own shoes when it comes to technology to know what's going on. These are people who can't do their own phone. They need to get their grandchildren to help them set up their Bluetooth, this, that, and the other. We can't expect them to know a thorium reactor from a small reactor from this reactor. We can explain to them that they're all inherently dangerous. They're all cancer factories. They're all uninsurable. They're all unnecessarily expensive. They're all unnecessarily boondoggles. They don't work. They can't work. They won't work. But we have not made that case. So I'd like to call upon everybody to take what Mila said to your member of Congress, to your local and your state elected official, and make them so sick of hearing from you to be buzzing in their ear like a mosquito at night, because telling each other all this is only going to get us but so far. And we have failed as a movement to be the warning shot, the siren that we need to be. And we used to be a lot better at this. We used to be a lot better at this. And that's, I know Mila and Sunny and other people on this Zoom have been extremely successful at shutting down some of these monstrosities. But like so many monsters, they keep coming back for a sequel. And we can't afford it. We can't afford to rest on our laurels. Although our laurels are admirable, we have to take it upon ourselves to not just tell each other about this, but to tell our friends and make it very well known, because we can't blame people for not knowing if we don't make the case, and we can make the case, just not to each other. We've already done that. So let's take it on the road. Let's take the show on the road and make sure everybody knows that these things are just 100% unacceptable, that they're killing people slowly and quickly, and we're just not going to take it.
Thank you, Mike. Very, very well said. And I think we can start by letting them know that nuclear regulation is solely controlled by Donald Trump. That might raise some eyebrows. Dorothy Wright, and then Nicole, and then we're done. Dorothy, please.
So I just want to say that I read that article about the data centers in the New Yorker. The data centers contain all the knowledge and information in the world, besides that they're working on AI. It's totally terrifying. And as far as crypto and the $3.8 billion, I firmly believe that all that $3.8 billion was bribes to Donald Trump, that the crypto was not bought by innocent investors. It was bought by people who wanted to bribe Donald Trump. That's what I think.
Thank you for that. You're probably 100% right. Nicole Ung, we'll finish with you.
Hello, yes. I heard the other day something about that might be the Achilles heel for the AI Center. They may not be able to sustain all that building and investment. So they're trying to get the US government to invest in it by making US government partners in it. So that they socialize the costs and they privatize the gains later. So and
Yes.
that's why they try so hard to get a lot of primary candidates, that they support, get them elected. So we have a lot of them already that won the primary, and we only have a small amount of people that still haven't gone through the primaries. So we have to do something about that.
Yes, we do. Thank you for that, Nicole. We're essentially out of time. It's 4:21 here in Los Angeles. Ray Lutz, please come back next week. We want to have a deep dive on AI, the specifics of AI. We had a great one today on the data centers. Thank you, Mr. Jones. It was wonderful. Thank you, Mike Hirsch, for bringing him. Thank you, Steve Caruso, for engineering. Carl Grossman, we're going to get that piece to the New York Times. And Milo Reeson, you're always great. Thank you, everybody. This is wonderful. We still have 44 people. It was another incredible session. So thank you, everybody. Oh, and My Country, the World. Well, thank you, or The World is My Country. Thank you, Arthur. It was a great presentation. Everybody should see that movie. And remember, no nukes, and we'll see you in Solartopia next week. Same time, same